So, the Super Mario Galaxy movie is out now, and by the time I get this video finished, it'll probably already be one of the highest grossing movies of the year, if not of all time, and I have not seen it.
You just got Haluigi'd!
I love the Mario games. I admit I did grow up a lot more with 2D Mario platformers and Mario Kart than I did with 3D Mario platformers, having never played Mario Odyssey and only having played Mario Galaxy for the first time a year or two ago, and from the title, and from what I saw in the marketing, I kind of assumed the second Mario movie would be based a lot more on the latter than the former, but that's not why I wasn't really that interested in watching this sequel right when it released. I would say by far the larger contributing factor was the fact that the first Illumination Mario movie from 2023 just wasn't very good. When I first saw it in theaters, I thought it was quite mid. When I rewatched it more recently, I thought it was pretty outright bad. However, it was a massive financial success, and Mario fans seemed to love it regardless, so I had no reason to believe the sequel would turn out any different. This happens a lot with these movies based on video games, but it seems particularly common with these Mario movies that many fans blame the poor review scores on their belief that critics are inherently dismissive of anything that isn't high art or whatever, that they don't know how to have fun or something. Even ignoring the fact that the belief critics never enjoy anything with a goofy subject matter or source material is not really based in reality. Like, honestly think for a moment. Between Mario and Sonic the Hedgehog, which one of these characters would you think critics are more likely to be inherently dismissive of, and then look at which movie adaptations scored better with them? I find this line of thinking to, ironically enough, itself be quite dismissive of others for having standards. I do really like a lot of these games, and that's precisely why, if they're going to make movies based on them, I want them to be good, and think they should be criticized if they aren't. I'm never going to say that something is impossible to adapt into a movie. However, even by video game standards, I think Mario would be particularly difficult to make work in this medium. Looking at it next to some of the other video game adaptations I've seen, with the Minecraft movie, Minecraft doesn't really have a plot at all, so they could simply use the game and its mechanics as a medium to tell whatever story they wanted. They just chose to tell one of the most bland and uninteresting stories of all time, which is why that movie sucks. Simplistic as they may be, the Mario games do, in fact, have defined plots. Like, you could make a movie that just uses the Mario power-ups or something as a plot device, but people would probably be confused why you're incorporating elements from the Mario games if the plot isn't about stopping Bowser and rescuing Peach or some other damsel. With the Sonic the Hedgehog movies, even though the games, at least the 2D ones, have similarly simplistic plots, Sonic has an obvious gimmick to his character. He's fast. It's easy to conceive how someone could write a bunch of scenarios where a character with super speed gets into antics. Mario, he's just a dude who jumps. To even begin to conceive of this character carrying a movie, they'd have to give him the strongest, most interesting personality and arc in the world, and, well, they don't. Yeah, I'm not going to pretend I'd know how to write Mario as an engaging movie protagonist, but what they did here definitely was not it. Of course, there are no strict rules for what makes a character a good protagonist, but generally, especially in an adventure story, I think a protagonist should desire something. And I mean something that goes beyond getting out of whatever scenario the plot dumps them into. For the first 10 or so minutes of the Mario movie, it looks like they're setting this up. These scenes seem to imply that the main thing that drives Mario is a desire to be respected by others, and he seems to get his chance when the plumbing system of Brooklyn is about to totally collapse because of a problem nobody can identify, but he can. However, while he's attempting to deal with this, he gets distracted by some random old tunnel he comes across, and decides that exploring it is more important than dealing with the supposed emergency that his entire attention had been on moments earlier. This is how he winds up in the Mushroom Kingdom, and this busted water main is not only never resolved on screen, it's never even mentioned again. This was supposed to be his big ticket to earning the respect of everyone who was doubting him earlier, but he just completely abandons it at the first possible distraction. So I guess it wasn't that important to him after all. Of course, the whole movie isn't just going to be about Mario fixing pipes, but when his supposed desire to be a respected plumber is basically all we've been given about him as a character, you would expect it to be important somehow. Like he says, I have to find my brother and get back. We finally had our chance to prove ourselves and now we're gonna miss it. For that to be part of what drives him throughout the adventure, and then it gets reincorporated during the climax or something, but you really might as well have just started the movie with them finding the portal, or even already being in the Mushroom Kingdom, because nothing that happened before then wound up mattering at all. And it never gets any better. Throughout most of the runtime, if I try to think of why Mario is doing what he is currently doing, the reasoning is usually very weak, and more often than not, I think they started with a set piece that referenced the games in some way, and any of the preceding scenes attempting to justify it were written retroactively. Pretty much every supporting character is similarly, if not even more unmotivated for why they're doing what they're doing, why they decide to join up with any other character, or why they're even in the movie at all. It never seems to go any deeper than they're in the games, so I guess they have to be in the movie. In the context of this movie, I don't know why Peach trusts Mario to come along on this quest. She just met the guy, and he doesn't even pass her test thing or prove himself to her in any other way. But they're kind of love interests in the games, so I guess they have to be paired up in this. I don't know why Toad comes along, or why the others let him. He pretty much outright says, I'm just here now, and then he's just there now.
Going on an adventure! Come on, guys! Da-da-da-dee-da-da-da-da. Hey, Mario!
You know this guy?
We're best friends. But are we?
Before he starts joining them on the adventure, his only interaction with either of the others was giving Mario directions, but he's another recognizable face from the games, so I guess he has to be featured prominently in this. The movie has absolutely breakneck pacing, and the most common theory I've heard for why this is was so they could squeeze in as many different references to the games as they possibly could, and this is definitely part of it. But I think it serves a dual purpose, in that it distracts you from how flat all of these characters are. For example, there's one scene where it almost looks like Mario and Donkey Kong, another recognizable character they shove in, are about to have a conversation and maybe form some kind of connection, but then the giant fish they're in suddenly burps them out, and we're just on to the next thing, and I don't remember if these two characters so much as exchange a line with one another for the rest of the runtime. I think this is why the scenes with Bowser or Luigi, despite the latter especially barely even being in the movie, were such standouts in this to a lot of people. Aside from Jack Black being one of the only voice actors who actually seemed like he was trying, Bowser is pretty much the only character that's actually motivated by anything in particular. He wants to marry Peach, you get it. And Mario's willingness to stand up for Luigi is basically the only bit of characterization he's given that's actually consistently retained throughout the story. Another way I've often seen fans defend this movie is effectively saying, who cares about the plot and the characters? It's entertaining, but those are two pretty big pillars of what makes a movie entertaining, at least for me. When the plot is just the plot of the Super Mario Bros. Games, but without the game part, the characters are all completely flat and unmotivated, and they don't really have any fun interactions or connect at all because the movie's crazy pacing whisks them along before there's much of a chance. What exactly is it that I'm supposed to be entertained by? There were always going to be a lot of people who enjoyed the Mario movie probably a lot more than they would have otherwise, simply because it was a Mario movie. Things they know from the games are shown up on the big screen, and that was enough to bump up their engagement with the film. In all honesty, I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. I think the conversation about nostalgia and other forms of emotional attachment or loyalty affecting people's perception of a piece of media has a bit more nuance to it than some say. While it absolutely can cause someone to hold a piece of media to maybe higher regard than it deserves, and stubbornly refuse to accept even valid criticism of the piece of media in question, I do think it can help someone find genuine things to appreciate in something that others without that emotional attachment likely wouldn't have given a second thought. I mean, I feel like that's a not insignificant part of the reason why films like, say, Megamind sometimes get the revival and popularity they do. I think the dividing line between being blinded by previous emotional attachment and being more open to something due to previous emotional attachment is whether you're able to describe why you like the movie aside from that. When I watched the Mario movie, yeah, on some level, I enjoy seeing and hearing all of these references to Mario and Nintendo, and making a game out of how many I recognize. Like, oh, it's a cameo from Mario's voice actor from the games. Oh, the ringtone is the GameCube jingle. Oh, Sunshine Travel Agency. Like, Super Mario Sunshine. I kinda hated that game, honestly, but I recognize it. Clearly, for some people, this is enough to hold their attention for the entire runtime. However, I find that the novelty does start to wear thin after a few minutes. Things like the Rainbow Road sequence or the training montage I mentioned earlier, set to maybe the most overused licensed song in film history, are treated like they're supposed to be some of the highlights of the whole movie, but like, I could just play the games. It's not really like they're bringing something to life in the same way they would when adapting a book or a comic. You can already watch someone drive down Rainbow Road rendered out in CG, or you could even do it yourself. It's not like the movie even exaggerates how it is in the games, really. The only other thing that could make these sequences more engaging than those alternatives would be if I was attached to these particular iterations of the characters, and as I said already, they're completely flat. I don't think the Super Mario Bros. Movie is as bad as the Minecraft movie, but aside from the Minecraft movie being a lot more ugly to look at, my conclusions on why this film is bad are almost identical, to be honest. There's only so many different ways you can say that it has little to no value as a standalone film. Movies are probably my favorite artistic medium. I would love it if these characters I like were put into something worthwhile, but as it is, if this movie was exactly the same, except Mario wasn't in it, there would be nothing about it that makes it worth watching or talking about at all. And when, regardless of whether it's being said in a positive or negative context, the overwhelming consensus is that the second movie is basically the same experience, except more, it doesn't exactly get me too excited.